Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon, with another episode of Dark Rhino Security's Security Confidential. Today, we have another phenomenal guest joining us, and I'll introduce her here very shortly. But I need to remind you, we are victims of the algorithm, and we need you to show a little love. Please hit the like and subscribe button so we can continue to keep bringing you these great speakers with immense knowledge and talent. And today, we are honored to have Dr. Shayla Treadwell join us. Dr. Treadwell is an executive leader. She specializes in risk management, cybersecurity, and IT assurance. Many, many years of experience in the arena. She co-founded the Treadwell Agency. They advise organizations on digital transformation, cyber risk, and compliance, known for developing effective cybersecurity risk management practices and sustainability programs, and we'll talk about that. Her recent research focuses on AI governance and assurance, which should be interesting. And she has a background in organizational leadership. Dr. Treadwell explores how strong leadership and security practices intersect to drive resilience. Welcome to the show, Shayla.
Thank
Appreciate you being
you.
here.
Thank you for having me today.
Oh, so we always start with a little bit of your background story. Were you always a cybersecurity nerd, or was there or did you come from a different place? Like, how did you get
So,
here?
yeah, um, I came from a different place.
Really?
I'm going to go back, but I'm going to go very quickly. So, I remember in my undergraduate career, because it was a career at that point, I went to Bradley University in Illinois, and I distinctly
Okay.
remember I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew I liked learning. And I ended up getting my degree in business.
Okay.
However, I had a management degree. I had a legal studies minor. I was like one class away from a music minor. I was doing everything until my mother told me to come home. So after I graduated, I had the privilege of being in a leadership development program for another Fortune 500 company. And
Okay.
what got me on this technical path was they took the marketing girl and they stuck her in external IT. I was like,
Really?
okay, yeah, like how am I going to help there?
So
However,
what was that conversation like? I mean, do you want to go
well,
from marketing?
for me, it's a rotational program. I had four rotations. The first one was external IT, and when I got there, I was like, well, how do I help? How do I help here? But that was the first time I had an opportunity to understand how technology impacts external customers. From
Okay.
there and building out SAP systems and CRMs and things of that nature, I was like, okay, next rotation, where am I going to go? And then they stuck me in an internal IT. I was like, okay, like there we go, another IT one. And
Okay.
from there, that kind of writes it. I had the distinct privilege of when the Obama administration launched the Affordable Health Care Act, and suddenly, you had insurance companies that had to talk to consumers that were not businesses for the first time. I got a chance to work with a huge healthcare company and I ended up working in a project management role that helped balance um, our back end developers, front end
Okay.
developers, and as well as our communications teams, because there was a need in the industry to really break down those technical things in digestible chunks to make sure everybody was on the same page. And from there, I started learning a lot about regulations, started learning a lot about security. HIPAA suddenly became something that I had to know about. Um,
Yeah.
but I will say that once that was launched, what really kicked off me converting completely from not just a technical role, but into a cyber role, I got a chance to work at Discover Financial under a phenomenal leader that allowed me to be his chief of staff. And
Wow.
yeah, I know. I'm like, wow. And at first it was like, you just want me to do your PowerPoints and your speaker notes? That's it. However, I quickly learned that I needed to understand everything. I needed to understand how to run, and I know I'm going to date myself, but how to run an information security program. What did that mean? What did it mean to understand cybersecurity? Because um, At that point, I was in my doctoral program, and with my research, what I learned is that traditionally, the only thing that mattered to companies was money. So therefore, when we
Very
started
true.
looking at information security and things of that nature, the information we were protecting was dollars and cents. That quickly expanded. And so what we now know of as cybersecurity, it's this beautiful Venn diagram with the two, and it expanded rapidly. And I wanted to understand what we needed to protect, how we needed to protect it, and what it looked like in today's society and business. Because the reality is, we've been encrypting data for a long time. Now, given it may have started with writing messages on the skulls of
Sure.
messengers, letting their hair grow and then shaving their head when they get to the
Yeah.
other location. That's a form of encryption. I don't recommend it. But it evolved very quickly. So for me, I always wanted to understand the boundaries in which we work and how do we strategically navigate that and building those partnerships across the board with all of our technical partners and protecting the things that matter the most. So my journey into cybersecurity was an interesting one because it evolved from me understanding business objectives and then being able to translate them into those requirements.
Which has been a huge gap with a lot of technical practitioners, at least, right? Because they
Yeah,
have a very hard time converting, you know, technical controls and technologies into a language that a business leader is going to really care about. Is like, does this save me money? Does this make me money? Does it preserve my money? Does it do
yeah,
any one of those three things?
absolutely. But I mean, you're spot on because when you start to look at cybersecurity, given it's not as new now, I mean, if you would have talked about 20 years ago, it's still been technically kind of new.
Yeah.
But when you start to really look at that, what you realize is that the foundation of businesses and the way that we operate um, those um, those functions from a risk perspective, it really makes us think about holistically what we're pushing for and how do we align business goals. Because the reality is, no cyber team can be successful unless you understand the business in which you're serving. What's their risk appetite? Is it an organization that can take on a little bit more risk, or is it something highly regulated where we have to be risk adverse? And how do you build programs to do that?
And Shayla, that's been a big controversy on this show, at least, is how the heck do you actually measure risk? Because there's all, I'm not, we're not going to waste time with all the different techniques and permutations and combinations, but this is always a debate of how do you assess risk and how much can you actually accept? How much can you transfer? And
Yeah,
how much do you mitigate? Those are the only three things you're doing with risk. That's it.
absolutely.
It comes down to
Absolutely.
those simple things. So you might be in an organization where you could throw caution to the winds and say, we'll just do endpoint. That's good
Yeah,
enough. And if we get breached, to heck with it. You know what? We'll just reimage the machines and we'll just run with the devil. And that's the end of the story, right? Or you could be in
absolutely.
a highly regulated environment where somebody else comes knocking on the door with a badge that says, okay, what did you do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's about who and what you're protecting. I think sometimes in organizations, we really don't think about it in those terms. I think that's the reason why I love to emphasize to people that information security and cybersecurity are not the same thing. However, they do intersect. Because when you start to think about information security, it's really about the business a lot, a whole lot. When you think about cybersecurity, there's, of course, proven standardized methodologies that we must implement from a cyber perspective. But cybersecurity cares about cyberbullying. Cybersecurity cares a little bit more about reputational things, even if it's not necessarily associated with the business directly. Whereas information security, it's really about the business, and that's the forefront of our minds. Um, I, I, I I try to make sure that I tell people that cybersecurity is so practical. A lot of times people envision cyber folks in the basement with a hoodie on and a matrix screen. That's not real. That's not how it works. We go to work every day in and day out, just like everyone else. We have goals, we have KPIs, and the adversary has the same exact thing. So we have to really make sure that as the world evolves and the way that we look at things, it's a little bit different. I mean, Domino's is a tech company. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
talk about that. So yeah,
Now, yeah, absolutely.
absolutely.
And you look at so many companies out there that could be their core operations or logistics, although they might be in the
Exactly.
shipping industry, right? I mean, or they might be in healthcare, but they're really a logistics company because they
Yeah.
could be doing mail order drugs at a steep discount. There's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
those out, right?
Yeah.
So, but that resilience, then, if you're going to bring resilience into the picture, where do the people in the organization fall on the continuum of building a resilient program? And how the heck do you counsel them to get them to do what you want them to do? Since you're a organizational behavior expert,
Yeah.
we want to know the answer to this.
This is a tough one because when you look at enterprise risk management and you start to look at the subsect of it being operational risk management, under operational risk, of course, we understand we have various pillars. One of those pillars is cybersecurity or information security, depending on the organization. It can be two separate things or one thing. However, resiliency is actually a separate pillar from cybersecurity, and most people don't view it that way, but technically it is. And when we look at
Yeah,
resilience, we have to also look at business continuity, service continuity, disaster recovery. And I mentioned those things on purpose because they're not the same. And depending on what business you're in, plans around it doesn't look the same either. If I could pick on credit card companies, I used to work for one. If I'm looking at a credit card company from a service continuity perspective, it's about my customer. If things go down on our side of the house, do I stop my people from being able to swipe? Is that a reputational risk that I'm willing to take on? Absolutely not. So in my service continuity plan, okay, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out because I don't want that to happen. But from a business continuity perspective, what's the impact on the business if we can't capture what the heck is happening out there and what these people have
right,
purchased? It's a different perspective. And then when you think about disaster recovery, okay, something bad happened. How do we fix things right now? Like, how do we get stood up right now? Some of the decisions that you will make from a resilience mindset depends on where you sit in that and where you sit in the organization around that. So I often tell people when you're talking to the business or whoever's delivering in this space, be mindful of their perspective because when you're looking at this at a systems view for the organization, you have to weigh those properly. And it's an unusual balancing act that the organization needs to play to make sure that the organization not only maintains delivering whatever service they have, but also being able to continue as a business holistically. You don't want to do
right.
something that's going to bankrupt you. Those are the weird nuance conversations that a lot of people don't like to have, but they're absolutely necessary, especially as we have evolution in technology and our capabilities at this point in time.
So, in that reference, then cybersecurity is really in, or I should say, infosec, because cyber really is just a subset of infosec,
Yeah,
um, right? Um, it's a people problem. It's a process problem that is mitigated by technology, but it is not a technology problem.
I agree. But you're talking to an org psychologist, so of course I'm going to agree. But yes, that's what I feel. So I always tell folks when we talk about people, process, and technology, I literally look at it in that order. Simply because at the end of the day, it's about our end users that are within our organizations. It's about the people that we're servicing or providing something to, and it's about the adversary. Those were all people.
Yes, they
So,
are.
keeping that in mind, technology is a tool.
That's exactly right. And on the adversarial side, they are people that might be studying your people. Because if you look
Bingo.
at business email compromise, that's really a process compromise if when you look at it.
Absolutely.
It is
Yeah,
not a
yeah,
technology compromise. It is someone finding the weaknesses in your processes to that enable them to extract money with your free will in play, and you're sending them a check,
yeah,
right? And that's just one example, but it is absolutely a good example. And is it a cybersecurity problem? Yeah, it is, but it's in that people, process, and technology continuum. It's first people and process that could really thwart all of this. And technology is
absolutely.
really just a backup in the whole thing. It's interesting,
Yeah,
Shayla. We work with a lot of small, medium businesses. You've worked with, Discover Financials is a mega monster corp. I don't know what their revenue was, but it exceeds the revenue of most third world countries, I would imagine.
yeah,
Right. Uh, the in the small company, Main Street USA side of things, we often coach people that if you don't understand any of this, think about this in terms of protecting your revenue chain.
absolutely. Yes,
And
yes,
if you
and no, I want
go
to
ahead,
just I want to emphasize what you're saying, because I've had the opportunity to work with smaller defense contractor organizations. What they're defending is just as important as the largest one out there. Whether they have what they have access to is just as important. So I always tell small and mid-sized organizations, don't count yourself out, and remain vigilant even though you may not have the most revenue. What you do is equally important, and we have to make sure that that's protected. It's just that the impact, if something hits you, is greater because of the size and scale of what you do. So actually you kind of almost have to be a little bit more vigilant to make sure you're protecting yourself.
yeah, and when something happens to you, because it eventually will, I think
And eventually
we
will.
always guide people that look, you got to go with the attitude that you are going to get breached. No one can stop a
Absolutely.
breach 100% of the time. It's not
Yeah.
possible. You want to make sure that you're not the conduit into a much larger organization that really causes
Yeah.
catastrophe. And third party
Absolutely.
risk is a very real thing, as you probably
Oh
know.
yeah. Absolutely.
In organizational behavior, I was always personally under the impression that that was part of an HR function, right? It, explain a little bit to our audience, because I think you're the first organizational behavioral person that we've had on this show.
Sure.
Um, a little bit about it. What is it really about? What does it entail?
Sure, sure. When you look at organizational behavioral scientists, or if you look at organizational development and things of that nature, it does traditionally sit in HR. However, um, when you apply it to a specific area like cybersecurity, it does help you gain a better understanding of the operational model that the organizations must traverse in order to be successful. Again,
Okay.
leaning on the people, process, technology aspect of things. I want to know operationally, how do we have to function in order to be successful, which people is the first part, because there are psychological principles that are embedded in the way that people work and operate in order to make us successful. So I decided to do this in a time where it was kind of weird. I'll admit that. I'll never forget when I was uh, coming up with my dissertation topic, and I was talking to my chair, and my chair is a neuroscientist. And she's like,
Okay.
Shayla, what are you talking about? What are you doing? And I was like, no, 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 just walk with me. Like I swear it's gonna make sense. And by time I finished and defended and did all of my research, um, it was really, really cool taking a step back and looking at some of the organizational development and behavioral science aspects of the way that cyber organizations function and the organization. what I will say is there are a couple of psychological principles that we don't think about. One of them is, for example, um, it's not about what you know or even what you say. It's about what people think you know and what they think you say. That is something that was quoted
That's interesting.
from the author of The Suggestible Brain. He's brilliant. I love that book. I would highly recommend it. And the reason why that's important in cyber is because you have to understand the level of influence that cyber leaders actually have in their organization. We're not the decision makers. We're not at
That
all. We're
no.
constantly giving recommendations to people to tell them what they should and should not do. So, to be able to have some of those operational principles and behavioral science concepts back of mind as you are trying to build and traverse information security programs actually ends up helping the organization because you want to ensure that. From an influence and understanding perspective, that you're delivering things in a way that's comprehensible to the holistic aspect of how the organization functions. Um, that's the behavioral science aspect of cybersecurity. Additionally, one more thing. Additionally,
Oh, keep going, keep
I
going.
know
You're on a roll here. So,
it's about the behaviors of the adversary that impacts your organization. So depending on what sector you sit in, the adversary may have a different motivation. That changes the way that I psychologically defend my organization and the way that I motivate my people to be able to do that and how I report it up. So it's about behaviors. It's all about behavioral change and being able to tweak those at the most minuscule level will make an organization successful or an organization might fall.
boy, I love it.
I'm
I'll tell you,
sorry.
I've been on the a pro. I've been on a mission. I sit on a board at a university in a computer science department, and I've been trying to instruct them in their cybersecurity program to adopt um, bring psychology into the program. And they're like, wait a minute, we're computer science people, what the hell do you want? And it's exactly around what you're saying. If you don't understand the mindset of the adversary,
Yes, you have to.
then how do you defend against that? Because I'll tell you, like, you look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, okay,
Mhm.
and people typically say, okay, let's take MITRE ATT&CK, and that outlines all the permutations, well, not all, but a whole bunch of permutations and
Yeah,
combinations in which people get infiltrated and techniques that are used, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What it doesn't highlight is the psychology that is employed to first case out the organization and
yes,
find that point of weakness to begin with.
absolutely.
Right.
I agree. And I would tell you this too. Um, I love talking about cybersecurity frameworks because I want people to really think about what a framework is. Sometimes we associate framework with compliance checklists. It's not the same. So when we're trying to implement any framework, whether it's the MITRE ATT&CK framework, when you start thinking about the principles around zero trust, I mean, NIST, you can name any of them, whatever, they're all great. But, and this is the analogy I love to tell people, if I'm building a house and someone tells
Okay.
me that I have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, blah, 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 right? And I
Right.
have to do it on 2 floors. I have 2 floors in my house. And I put all the bedrooms on the second floor and put all the bathrooms on the first floor. Did I follow the framework? Absolutely. I have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms. Is that the best way to do it? Probably not. Probably not. But that's where you start to have those conversations about operationally how do we need to operate to ensure that we are as effective and efficient as possible. And that's not always the same thing as our maturity level. And I think that sometimes people look at it as the same. It's not always the same, but those behavioral things help you understand your organization as well as the adversary. And for me, I love training and awareness programs. I think that they tell you a lot of dark data about your organization. I know that's my other hat that comes on when I say that. But for example, if I did a phishing simulation and we're doing them month after month and our our click rate is pretty low. That's great. That's phenomenal, right? And then suddenly I do one that has something to do with, I don't know, a dating website. And you're like, nobody in our organization is going to click that. And suddenly a whole bunch of people click it. It just told me you got a lot of lonely people in your organization and they want to find someone to date. But that's dark data about the mindset of the people in your organization at a cultural level and what they're most susceptible for. So it's about what behavior do you want to change, as well as what data can you tell me about this org? Because if I have an adversary sitting in my organization and they see something like that, they're like, oh, that's a really cool way to get in. There's a bunch of lonely people that just work all day at this
And I
organization that's
assure
curious about
you
what.
that they
Hello?
will be thinking along those lines.
Yes, yes. So that's
Because
the reason why I think there's a nice intersection with psychology and cyber.
how do you uncover that dark data, quote unquote? How do you find out? Because no one wants to put their dirty laundry out in the air, right? So,
Yeah, I
how do you
always.
actually find out those factors that could really make an organizational vulnerable in a sense?
So I think there's a few different ways that you can get this done. One, with any security team that does training and awareness that I've ever worked with, I always tell them do some type of pulse before you deploy any campaign because I want to understand the behavioral change after it's done. So if that is a phishing simulation, brilliant. If that means that I'm looking at how many incidents were happening in the organization, okay, okay, what incidents are happening? What are people losing their laptops in the airport? Why? Like you figure out all of that beautiful dark data about the organization, and partnering with HR actually does help. I love partnering with HR, our incident management teams, things of that nature, because in cyber, it's interesting that we're one of the only organizations that's measured by the big stuff, meaning you either get a breach or you're phenomenal, and we don't look
Yeah.
at the in between. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's one way. The second way is talk to your people. That sounds bananas, but I'm serious when I say something that elementary. Do a focus group. I had the opportunity to support a large federal organization, and we had some people clicking on some weird stuff, and it happened month after month after month. Traditionally, in most organizations, they'll say, well, we need some type of negative repercussion for that behavior. However, I said, hey, can we talk to them and figure out what's going on? And after having a conversation with them, we found out they had an internal process that because they work in a customer service capacity, they have to click on everything to make sure that we're serving customers, and they must do it at a certain rate because that's how they're incentivized.
Ah,
So it's not that they don't have a desire to do the right thing. They believe that that behavior is the right thing because we have incentivized that behavior for them. So how do
right.
we change as a company to change the way what we incentivize and how we do that incentivization? So that in combination with looking at what's happening from an incident management perspective, understanding what events were happening. Let's not even go to incidents. What events? Like what's just making alarms go off? Look
Yeah.
at that as well, because that can lead to things. And we have to understand how we've asked people to operate. And is that the optimal level that as an organization we want to be at?
Wow. So for our audience in the SMB world, in simple terms, follow the money.
All the money.
Because
Absolutely.
that's a great example. That incentive. Look,
Yeah.
if I get bonused on a certain kind of behavior, I don't really care what your cybersecurity policy is. Guess what I'm going to do? If your policy interferes with my ability to own that condo down in Key Biscayne, well, the condo wins.
Exactly. And the thing about it, I mean, I don't want to just pick on the customer service aspect of things. I'll take it up
No,
a
but
notch.
there's so many
It happens
examples I could.
everywhere.
It
Yeah.
happens all. How you incentivize people, and not just how you measure them, is going to the KPIs you've put in place are going to drive behavior, and it may have a lot of unintended consequences. Boy, you know what? We could take up three shows talking about that, because there's a couple stories there that I could tell you about. You'd be like, wow, that's a good one. You
Yeah.
know, the and it had nothing to do with technology in cyber, but it resulted in a lot of cyber losses.
Absolutely. And I think for me, coming from the governance, risk, and compliance space and really thinking about business enablement holistically for the company, it dictates what we write, how we write it, and what we enforce, and what that looks like. And that goes from my technical teams all the way to my non-technical folks. If I'm incentivizing people to get the code done fast, and I don't want them to use certain AI tool sets to get the code, what's the incentivization? Or if I don't want a public GitHub, you know, how does that actually work? And I think that when you start really getting into the nitty gritty of things, it's really operationally, how do we need to operate as a cyber organization or an infosec organization, and how do we ensure we protect things that matter the most to the org?
That I love it, Shayla. That is a very cool point of view and a perspective to take, and I hope everyone listening takes this to heart, because it can make it's a switch in mindset. It's a nuanced switch in mindset that can actually have a dramatic impact, and it can lower your cost for an infosec program.
Yes, it could. Yes,
It really could, because if
dramatically.
you put the right policies and behaviors in place, you your technology mitigation takes a different form.
It
And
does.
that's
And I love how you
directly
said that. Yes, it's a different form. It doesn't mean that it's gone, because some people think that we're trying to take tech away. No, like if you look
no.
at any report, well, first of all, everyone's in tech debt right now. But when you start to really look at that, it's not taking the tech away. We're optimizing it, because now we can start to focus on the areas that we need to.
So let's bring in, so far we've talked about people, but what about virtual people, i.e., AI? Let's bring that into
AI,
it's.
absolutely.
You can't have a podcast today without talking about AI, because then we wouldn't be much of a podcast.
Understood. Yeah, AI is
And no one
so
would
great.
want that, and you wouldn't want to be on the show. So, how do, you talk about AI and resilience and assurance. To me, AI is a wild horse, because depending on what you fed it, it's not going to unmemorize it. See,
Yeah.
back in the day, you could drop table in a database and the data went away.
Yep.
When you checked in the, whether it was CCPA or the European law around
Yes. Yeah.
privacy. Yeah, yeah, your GDPR, you can
GDPR and
go,
all those.
yeah, you could if you click the box, I could find the data and either delete it or anonymize it or do some way. But if
Yeah.
I have trained an AI model with that data, there's no one deleting it.
No, there
So
isn't.
how do you this I'm at a loss. How do you do AI? Is AI governance an oxymoron? That's
I don't think that AI governance is an oxymoron. AI governance stresses us to do the basics again. That's the way that I love to tell people. When I look at security, the foundational things of security are around asset management and access management. Do you know what's connected to your system, and do you know who can get to it? You know what I mean? And when you start to look at things like AI, specifically large language models, I'm not going to go into deep learning and things of that nature, because it can get a little crazy, because AI is its own little ecosystem or universe of
yeah, and people don't. There's about
possibilities.
23 different ways you can execute AI. It's not just
Yes,
LLMs.
it's not just LLMs at all.
Right.
But if I can hone in on LLMs, because that's the most popular form right now, I think it's critical for folks to understand how this works. And when I say that, the evolution of AI has been something phenomenal over time. I believe that it comes with its risks and it comes with its benefits. Some of the risks, if you really know how it works and understand the black box that nobody understands with AI, that's where it gets scary. It gets a little scary. So when I'm thinking about AI governance, I'm starting to ask the questions around those foundational elements of, okay, what did you train this thing off of? What does it have access to? Is it a self contained LLM? Because those exist technically if you put it within a specific boundary that you have within a designated cloud with a specific data set. So like you can narrow it. But when you start to look at our tech stacks, many of our vendors have turned on AI and probably didn't even talk to you about it. So,
Sure.
how do you leverage it, and how do you assist people in your organization in using it to be able to take care of the low hanging fruit? That's the way I'm going to say it. While simultaneously making sure that the risks around it are understood. And I think that it comes down to, unfortunately, it comes down to what are our contractual obligations? What are our regulatory obligations? And is that the right tool set in that environment for that? Um, I tell people to think about what you promised as well as a little bit around the appetite thing again, because there are some absolutely brilliant AI tool sets out there that I would never tell you to use for federal data or use for um, PII and things of that nature because you're taking your customer and you're putting their information in it. Is that okay? And do they know that? And then as we look at more global organizations, the way that Europe has handled it is completely different than the US. You mentioned GDPR, and when you start to look at the AI regulations that they stack on top of that, because at the point when GDPR was first getting pushed out, we didn't have the GANs network for AI to really be able to do all the magical, wonderful things that we can do today. So they had to stack on top of it some of the AI regulations with it. But that's not how the world works holistically. So I always tell people from an AI governance perspective, it's really scoping the usage. How are we using it? How are we building it? Does it fit our ethical contract that we've made with our customers and ourselves? And are we disclosing it properly? And it's really controlling that process. And like I said, it almost gets down to the basics again of the way that we used to view security like 20 years ago.
Okay, so now I'll play devil's advocate on it. That's
Sure, this is
how
great.
perhaps it should be done.
Should.
Now, going, yes,
Should.
underline asterisks, and you can bold that word. Should be
Should.
done. Should.
Yeah.
Now, how does it usually get done? Right. So people have are often tasked with a goal
Yeah.
to have an AI strategy, roll out a piece of. You're not putting that genie back in the box,
No,
right?
absolutely not.
So I'll use the most simple example of, well, as an organization, we're going to not allow the use of Chat GPT. That's it. That's our policy on AI. All right. Well, I can tell you for a fact that's got 100% failure rate.
Absolutely.
It's not going to work because
Absolutely.
people are going to go and do it. And now they're going to do it without the governance framework
Without the
or
guardrails.
mindset.
Yep.
And they're going to put spreadsheets up there. They're going to put, hey, review this contract for me. I kid
Yep.
you not, right? And because the organization officially doesn't support it, they're going to use the free version, which is allowed to learn off of that data. So
Yes.
now all your stuff is exposed. And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thinking, unfortunately, what I've seen, Shayla, is that it's often not accounted for in the decision making environment.
And that isn't that the fascinating part about that? I distinctly remember it's years now ago where we first started to understand the very beginning stages of Chat GPT, and I was like, we need to figure out how to allow it. And I remember the org was like, "What are you talking about, Shayla? Aren't you supposed to be the one that's risk adverse around here?" I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I would much rather them use it and we help them understand how to prompt properly, what it looks like to hand for data handling and classification and things of that nature, using it
Exactly.
properly versus telling someone not to use it at all. I don't. It's like a child. It's like don't touch the stove. It's like I'm gonna go touch the stove right now.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. And let me make it even worse. Your competition is using it. So
Absolutely, they're using it.
how do you stay above the curve? So that's why I've always told people you got to embrace this thing, but let's give some guardrails to embrace it safely. Now, will that mean that we mitigate this risk completely? Absolutely not. There's going to always be someone who uploads that one thing they're not supposed to. However, it does help us get it down a little bit because when people understand how it works, understand, oh, this is how I can get the best result from it, and understand, oops, I need to protect this, you know what I mean? Because I want somebody to protect this from me, it helps in the process. So it's about how we embrace that journey along the way and what it looks
That is a key takeaway here, because if you don't, then your data is going to get exposed, and you're
like.
not
Absolutely.
going to, regardless of GDPR or CCPA or whatever, you're not going to be able to roll it back. And
Yeah.
that is the thing that I think gets lost on a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they don't understand why, because they don't understand how a neural network essentially works. And if you're going to train it or give it some data, make sure it's not identifiable. Or if you're working with the model, make sure that it is set to not remember anything, and it is not, you're
You,
not on a free platform where anything that is free, you are the product. That game never changed. You know,
yes, there's, is there a book about that? Like there's nothing free or something like that?
there
I
is
know there's
nothing
a book.
free, right?
There's nothing
But
free.
those fundamentals, at least from what I have seen, do they get talked about? Sometimes, but not really. And that
Yeah.
is it's to me good hygiene, just like patching is good hygiene, but we even haven't figured that one out. You know, people are like, well, we're
No.
just going to hit the CISA top 10. I'm like, forget that, man. Do the CISA top 3. If
Yeah.
you can do that, then you're better than 90% of the people out there, because
Yes. And I'm going to go
it,
a step further. I love what you just said because another thing, if you have an organization that has the capability, lean into it. Allow your people to understand how to build some of these things. Allow your people to experiment with digital twins within a safe environment. Because I think that the more that you learn about it and the more that we encourage people to use things in a safe environment, the more people know how to protect themselves, and that extends to their family all the way to their jobs. It's about protecting people holistically.
how can you use AI to positively affect resilience? Has that come across your desk yet?
No, no, it has. And the way that I've seen it done, it traditionally, if we have like a tabletop exercise and we're doing a digital twin of a network or something like that, then
Uh
you can
huh.
actually play out the entire thing and you can watch the catastrophe just happen. I think sometimes doing things like that and allowing AI to play the role of an adversary or something like that, it enables organizations to build out more resiliency in ways that they never imagined. I'll use an analogy. My husband's a professor, and I remember when academia was going through this big thing of um, should we allow our students to use ChatGPT? No, you're cheating, all these things. And I
Well,
distinctly
good luck
remember,
stopping it. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
I distinctly remember sitting and talking with him, and he was like, I'm cool with my students using it. And I said, okay. He says, I have to change. And I said, what does that mean? He says, use it. And then when you bring your paper to class, switch it with your partner. And I want that person to think about how they could have made that better. It like use it as a tool to help us get better. And I think that sometimes we veer away because people want quick answers. We've taken jobs and we compressed all the jobs so that it's not one role anymore. You got like one person doing three roles, and so you're trying to get things done as fast as possible. But I think that there is something to being a SME, being a subject matter expert. Um,
Absolutely.
I want people to know that. I forgot who said it. He was a brilliant guy. He worked and built a lot of AI models, but he was describing how and this is back in the day when hallucinations ran rampant. He was asking ChatGPT for a chocolate chip. I'm sorry, for some code. He wanted some code, and it came back with a chocolate chip cookie recipe. Technically, that's some code. Like if you really think
Yes, it
about
is.
it, right? And when you understand predictive analytics and statistics and things in nature of how AI functions, it tried to deliver something. It learned afterward that that was not what you were looking for from a code perspective. But could you imagine someone that doesn't know code at all getting that and saying, okay,
Yeah.
so I just put this in here and it's going to output me a beautiful website? You got to know a little bit of something in order to be dangerous with this thing. And I don't want people to feel that AI can just take over for you. Use it to fortify yourself, make yourself better, and learn more. That's the only reason why I love how Microsoft calls it Copilot. Let it walk along with you. Because if it's not helping to make you better, then what is it doing?
Uh, Wonderfully said. Being an engineer, I'm always a little biased on this. And back in the day, when we were going through engineering school, AI, of course, was not a thing. I mean, there was
Yeah,
talk of it, and
we never had that stuff.
um, no, and then the compute power was so limited, it wasn't even funny. But it was never about the answer. The one thing was always the answer was worth a point. And most tests, there was no multiple choice in engineering back then. It was all, well, there's 5 questions, pick 4 that you want to do.
Yeah,
And all the value was in the setup. Do
yeah,
you understand the physics and the mathematics so that you can use that recipe to solve the problem? If you can set it up, the actual calculation in the real world, if you're practicing, no one's going to believe your number. There will be 100 people that are going to check and recheck that stuff
yeah,
before anything
absolutely.
becomes real, right? So, in some ways, if we use AI now as an opportunity to get away from the answer being the important thing, and do you understand the why behind the problem and not the how? Right?
Yes.
If you understand the why, there's plenty of people that understand the how. Do you understand the why? If you understand the why, you are always ahead. There was an old saying, the man who knows how will always have a job, and the man who knows why will always be his boss.
Yes. Yes. I
And
mean, I love that.
and so if you understand the why, and AI can be an enabler to understand the why. But your husband is right, but that's going to require a mind shift in education also to change it.
It's a big shift. I love how you talked about the problem. There's a professor. He's at Harvard, Dr. Waldo, and he works in the public policy school. However, he's definitely a techie. I'll put it that way. He's a techie, and he always starts his classes with asking saying pretty much, in this semester we're going to solve a problem. And it's kind of stuck with me because day in and day out at work, you have to think about the problems that you're solving. And I love how you said it's the why. And I know there's like a 5 why principle. You're supposed to ask why 5 times. I find that in a fast food world, we just want it fast. We want the answer. Sometimes understanding the why and the process, that's where the meat is. That's how you can shave down time when you're building something. That's how you make those modifications and those upgrades. It's not in what happens at the end. It's about the process in the middle. That's the delta between googling something and chat gpt and something. It's the process in the middle. So I think that I just encourage people, use it as a study aid. Like always, stay curious. If I tell people anything, stay curious. Staying curious lets you to continue living, and especially in the cybersecurity world, figure out that in between, that why. With all these cool tool sets we have, we can do some good work.
Shayla, it's We could continue this conversation for a long time, but we're at the hour, and we wanted to give you a chance to plug anything that you would like our audience to know about you, or whatever subject you'd like to let them know about.
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things right now that's near and dear to my heart, I'm actually the co-chair of the Cybersecurity Summit in Minnesota. And
Okay.
for the summit in Minnesota, it's very unique because people are like, Minnesota, where did that come from? I get that all the time. But Minnesota, for critical infrastructure, the 16 areas of critical infrastructure, they have headquarters for each and every one of them, unlike every other state. So it's actually a pretty big deal for them. And at this summit, I would encourage if anyone's curious about anything and you can come out or if you can log on or something like that, please do because we're having conversations around being fearlessly forward this year in a world where it feels like sometimes we're standing still or things are coming at us left and right and we don't know where to go. We're discussing how, as cyber professionals, how do you become, get fearlessly forward in the way that you're working on things, whether it's quantum, AI, all these wonderful things. What does that mean? And what does it mean to critical infrastructure here in the US? The summit is
Oh,
October 21st through the 22nd. And like I said, even if people can't come, you can find us on LinkedIn. We post things all the time. I just want to further education and make sure people understand that even if you're a novice in this space, this is a wonderful opportunity to connect with some good people and some good tracks so that we can continue working together to promote cybersecurity and building a more secure future.
that's fantastic. And Shayla, if people want to get a hold of you, is there a means by which they can do so?
Absolutely. I highly recommend that you connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me at Shayla Treadwell on LinkedIn. Please send a message. I love connecting with people. I have a queue I got to get through because I owe people a couple of things. But please connect with me. If you have questions about anything, I'm the person you can ask a question. I'll try to answer it. If I don't know it, I'm pretty sure I know somebody who probably does. I feel that in this community, we want to make sure that we support each other. A lot of times people make things a competition. Nope, we're all on the same side. Let's go ahead and go out there and do good things and work together. And even, like I said, even if you're new to this, from a knowledge, skills, and abilities or KSA's perspective for cybersecurity, don't ever think you're not qualified. I don't care if you have a communications degree, a marketing degree, or if you have a computer science degree. Trust me, you probably have a competency that we need. We just got to make sure you get in the right spot. That's all.
Great words to end this podcast on. Shayla, it's been a pleasure to have you here. And don't be a stranger. Come
I
back.
won't. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a blast. This hour went by way too fast for
It
me.
went by way too quickly, and we could have continued. We didn't even get through the questions, and I knew that would happen. But that's okay.
That's okay.
It's all good. It's all good. It was a fascinating conversation, and we deeply appreciate your time. And we'll love to have you back sometime.
Thank you very much. Thank you.